If you're frustrated by all the titles leaving Netflix lately, especially if you're like me and you treat Netflix like your own personal DVD collection, then stick around. I am about to recommend some long forgotten Netflix originals. Not only are all these movies better than Bright or Bird Box, but they actually came out first. But in 2015, one of their very first is still to this day one of the best Netflix original movies ever released. Beasts of No Nation. Now, not only does this star Idris Elba in a role as like a very convincing warlord, but it revolves around child soldiers, so this movie is fairly upsetting, but it is expertly done. In fact, just after directing one of the greatest episodes of television ever created, director Cary Yoji Fukunaga directed Beasts of No Nation, and it is a stunning movie. I mean, the cinematography, the setting, it just puts you there, and it's honestly a place you don't really want to be, but it depicts the life of a child soldier with just vivid detail. Idris Elba gives just a top-notch performance. This movie features a quality that we just do not see with most Netflix originals, unfortunately. When this released, there was so much promise with Netflix originals. Not to say that there haven't been good ones like this, but they are definitely few and far between. Jumping way ahead in time to September 2016, we've got a low-budget, super low-budget sci-fi flick that is beyond interesting. It's titled Ark.
What do you want?
The Ark. It's what they're after.
What's it do?
You don't know what you're...
This is kind of a time paradox movie. I hesitate to call it time travel, even though they definitely are moving through time in Ark. But the entire movie takes place in one location. There is this device in the basement of this house, and the main characters kind of keep getting reset back in time. Kind of like Groundhog Day, but the movie never really has a Groundhog Day vibe to it. It feels much more like a Christopher Nolan movie, meaning it's got an interesting idea, the way that this device works. It's interesting enough to support a feature-length movie, and they make good use of it. Again, for a low-budget flick that takes place in one location, Ark is excellent. But only jumping ahead to October 2016, we've got a movie that rivals Beasts of No Nation. The Siege at Jadotville is based on a real battle that took place in 1961. About 100 Irish soldiers working on a peacekeeping mission for the UN are trying to hold down a particular base in the middle of the Congo during a massive conflict, and they're suddenly overwhelmed by massive forces. To top it off, not a single soldier among them has ever seen any sort of combat. Now, unlike a lot of movies like this, the battle portions are kind of the weakest part of the movie. They're actually not filled with a lot of effects shots or anything like that. They feel a bit low budget, but the story does dive into the details as to why they were basically hung out to dry, and they're essentially used as this political pawn. So the movie explains all that well, but also Jamie Dorner plays the commanding officer, and it shows how he was able to keep his men alive in this like dire situation. It's a very interesting historical event, so any history buffs watching, if you somehow missed this one, it's a real gem. Just don't go into it expecting to see a lot of combat action. The movie's about a lot more than that. Now, Netflix was on an excellent run back here in 2016, again, before their big budget sci-fi fantasy movie Bright released. They had a better sci-fi flick that went criminally overlooked. It's titled Spectral. Now, I have talked about this movie many times here on the channel, but it still hits as one of the better Netflix original sci-fi flicks, and I consider it to be fairly rewatchable. It's got a look and feel similar to Black Hawk Down, but there is something supernatural happening in this one, and it's kind of a mystery movie at the same time. Even though there's a lot of tactical action in it, the movie is fairly tame violence-wise, mainly because of the supernatural element, but it's still a really exciting movie. Like, if I had gone to the movie theater and paid to see this, I would not have been disappointed. I remember thinking that back when it originally released, and I have rewatched it since the release, making it, again, one of my favorite Netflix original sci-fi flicks. Next up, I've got a zombie movie, and yes, speaking of zombies, this Dawn of the Dude shirt, along with some other new designs, are available now at darrenvandam.com/shop. The shirts are ridiculously soft. I wear them all the time. They are a little bit fitted, so if you like them loose, definitely go a size up. But next up, we've got a zombie flick from Australia that has got a different setup than you normally would get with a zombie flick, and as a result, it's got a lot more heart to it. It's titled Cargo. Now, this is from Australia, and it takes place in the Outback. Martin Freeman stars in this, and honestly, he makes this movie work. He spends most of this movie alone with a baby lost in the Outback during a zombie apocalypse, and so you need a strong performance to kind of carry you through a movie like this. But he's stuck with this baby all by himself, and very early on in the story, he suffers a bite, and he knows he's only got so much time before he turns, and in the wasteland of the Australian Outback, amid this zombie outbreak, he's got to find someone who can take care of his baby before he turns. So it's a very compelling plot. It is set in motion very quickly, and then you end up with kind of a slow-paced movie, but still like an excellent zombie flick with a lot more heart than you would normally get from a zombie movie, with just an overall interesting setup. Now coming up, I've got a really bizarre one starring Elijah Wood in almost like a Napoleon Dynamite type character, but like in a crime thriller type thing. But before that, I do want to tell you about today's sponsor, Magic Spoon, which has been my late night treat of choice for years now. Even though I do eat right and try to consume a fairly high protein diet, I've got a sweet tooth typically late at night, and Magic Spoon hits the spot and scratches that sweet tooth itch. And that's because Magic Spoon is a delicious high-protein treat that reminds me of breakfast cereals from when I was a kid. Each bowl of Magic Spoon contains only 4 to 5 net grams of carbs, but a whopping 13 to 14 grams of protein with 0 grams of sugar. Magic Spoon is also soy-free, grain-free, gluten-free, with no artificial colors or sweeteners. It's just been a great and honestly enjoyable way to pack on a few extra grams of protein at the end of a long day. But if you don't do the milk, Magic Spoon also has treats and granola. The granola is new and it is fantastic. It is the most delicious thing I've had from Magic Spoon. I love mine with yogurt. And right now my viewers can save $5 off their first order when they visit my link down in the video description, or just go to magicspoon.com/flick or follow this QR code. It doesn't really matter. As long as you're there, you're gonna save $5. If you're not sure what to get, I recommend going with a variety pack, but this is a product I have been enjoying for years now, so I'm happy to recommend it. But speaking of things I want to recommend, let's get back to these movies.
Makes me so furious. Kevin, stop it! Is there anything I can do?
I don't feel at home in this world anymore. Not only wins the award for longest title on the list, but it also wins the award for weirdest movie on this list. And it is a weird one, but in a really fun, pretty accessible way. Melanie Lynskey plays the main character in this movie, and she plays a woman who has really just had enough of everyone's crap. She teams up with Elijah Wood's character, who, like I said, has kind of like a Napoleon Dynamite type vibe, but this movie's got a raw edge to it, like a rough criminal edge. Not in a way that's gonna really turn anybody's stomachs or turn them off, even though there is a vomiting scene in this movie that's, you're gonna wanna maybe look away, some of you, for that one. But other than that, this one's got almost like a Coen Brothers kind of a vibe. Slightly different flavor, but it's definitely in the same wheelhouse.
I'm not letting you shoot anyone else.
Next up, I've got another kind of crime thriller, but this one has a lot in common with Christopher Nolan's Memento.
And what is the point of being the only clean person in a town that's completely dirty?
When I'm dirty, my mom gives me a bath.
That's what I'm doing. I'm giving this town a bath.
Shimmer Lake has a pretty interesting cast, but the story set up, like I said, is very much like Memento. You've got a crime story where you're working your way backwards, basically through an entire week, through about 7 days, and that backwards setup is not really done to kind of play a mind trick on you the way it is with Memento. It is the perfect way to uncover this crime and what has happened, because there's a lot of moving parts with it. Now, this one too has kind of a Coen Brothers Fargo-y type vibe, much more so than like a Christopher Nolan feel. Now, in August 2017, they released a documentary that I think to this day is still the greatest documentary they have released, and honestly, it's going to be difficult to top Icarus.
I was thinking that would start, I ask you questions, and you answer yes or no. Were you the mastermind that cheated the Olympics?
Yes.
Now, not only did this win an Academy Award for Best Documentary Feature, it really is truly an incredible story. The creation of the documentary is an incredible story. So essentially, the way it started out is Dan Fogel was trying to do a documentary about doping, specifically blood doping with cyclists. He was going to do a difficult race without any performance enhancement. And then a year later, he was going to do cycles of performance enhancing routines and try to see what the difference was in his performance. Now, through this process, he enlists the help of a Russian man that's going to help him set up this doping routine. And it turns out this man was responsible for doping the Russian Olympic teams in a wild conspiracy that essentially unfolds as this documentary is being created. So not only is it a wild story, but it's literally happening and escalating as they're filming, and it's totally taking the filmmakers, including Dan Fogel, by surprise from beginning to end. It's honestly one of the most compelling documentaries I've ever seen, and again, it's just stuck on Netflix. It'll be there forever, likely. Now, you've noticed I'm doing these in chronological order, and next up, back-to-back in consecutive months, we've got two of the best Steven Spielberg adaptations Netflix has ever done, and honestly, two of the best like made-for-TV Stephen King adaptations I've ever seen, and there are a lot of those. In September, they released Gerald's Game. This was directed by Mike Flanagan, who would go on to do all those excellent series, most recently The Fall of the House of Usher. But Gerald's Game, I believe, was his first Netflix project, and it's a great one. If you don't know the story here, a husband and wife are on a semi-romantic getaway. If you watch the movie, you'll understand why I said semi-romantic. But anyway, he handcuffs her to the bed and then promptly dies of a heart attack on the floor. Now, that's not a spoiler, that's how Gerald's Game starts. She's then stuck there and really has no way out. And considering that most of the movie takes place in this bedroom that she can't escape, it's just expertly directed. I was glued to the edge of my seat the entire time. And even though the underlying story that develops is quite upsetting, it is too just handled perfectly, I thought, for a movie like this. But I will say, Gerald's Game did get a fair amount of recognition. Obviously, Mike Flanagan went on to do great stuff with Netflix. But the very next month, maybe it overshadowed 1922, because this one I think is brilliant as well and went largely unnoticed. Not only is the movie fairly well done, but Thomas Jane, I think it's a career best performance from him. He's almost unrecognizable in this movie. But this takes place on a remote farm in 1922, and it's an excellent period piece. It's fairly slow-paced, but very gothic. Feels almost like an Edgar Allan Poe type story set in the 1920s. And then this is where Netflix starts picking up a little bit of speed with their Netflix original movies, because in the same month, they released Wheelman, which is still an awesome and overlooked action movie.
You know who this is?
I don't know you.
You're driving for me. The other two, leave them behind.
I'm not leaving them behind.
They're gonna kill you.
Frank Grillo plays a getaway driver, very much like Ryan Gosling in Drive. In fact, this entire movie is almost like that opening sequence in Drive, except Frank Grillo never leaves the car, and I believe the one or two times that he does, the camera never leaves the car. Now, the movie is shot in a really dynamic way. It's not as if it's a one camera setup, but if you ever saw the film Locke with Tom Hardy, which is an excellent movie and it's very compelling, this is like an action movie version of that, and it's a lot of fun. But for possibly the funniest Netflix original movie I've seen yet, and yes, I do suffer from an immature sense of humor, we're gonna jump all the way to August 2018 for the package. Now, this is from the creators of Workaholics, a show that I thought was just comedy gold, and they created this movie not long after the end of Workaholics, and I think it is every bit as funny. You follow some teenagers on a camping trip. One of them gets a little bit too wieldy with his pocket knife, cuts his male member off by accident, has to be airlifted to the hospital, but they take the wrong cooler, and his friends are left there in the middle of the wilderness with, again, the right cooler, I guess, the one that should have gone with him to the hospital. So now they've got this thing in a cooler and they've got to figure out how to get back out of the woods with it. So it's a hilarious setup, but the reason I'm recommending it so strongly for, again, people with that same kind of Workaholics sense of humor, is the comedy is hilarious. All the actors involved are really funny. It's well written. I mean, for a Netflix original, this one hits a lot harder than they typically do. Now, jumping ahead to September 2018, we've got a real mysterious one that a lot of people honestly did not like back when it released, but if you like really kind of bizarre, dark movies that are gonna make you think for days or weeks, potentially, I highly recommend Hold the Dark. Jeffrey Wright plays this wolf expert that's brought in to help track down some wolves that possibly kidnapped some missing children. Or at least he's trying to find out if the wolves were potentially responsible. But the movie is about so much more than that. There's actually something really dark and creepy happening kind of beneath the surface of this movie, and it doesn't really bubble up till you get kind of past the halfway point. Now, this is one that will leave you guessing by the end. You're going to be maybe even scratching your head, but there's quite a lot happening with Hold the Dark. You do need to be in the mood for a fairly grim, slow-paced movie, but if you want something mysterious that you can sort of decode in almost a Stanley Kubrick type way, then Hold the Dark does accomplish that to a degree. Now, it's a toss-up between my next pick and Beast of No Nation as to which one's the most upsetting on this list. Even though it's upsetting, my next pick is so good, I still need to recommend 22 July, which is based on the true story of the worst terror attack to ever hit Norway. This is written and directed by Paul Greengrass, who's done movies like Captain Phillips, The Bourne Identity, and it revolves around a bombing and a mass shooting where 70 people were killed. But 22 July shows everything in chronological order, and it's done in several acts. So you see the actual terror attack, then you see all of the aftermath, what happened to the families, some of the legal things, because they actually do catch this guy, and then the finale is a fairly long trial sequence. So this is a long movie. It's 2.5 hours long, but there's a lot happening that unfolds. It could have basically been a mini-series, but they compressed it into a 2.5 hour movie. Now, next up, I've got another one that's got a bit of an Edgar Allan Poe vibe, but it's got more H.P. Lovecraft than Edgar Allan Poe, and it's from the same director as The Raid and The Raid 2, Gareth Evans. It's titled Apostle. This takes place in the early 1900s. A man is trying to rescue his sister from a cult, a religious cult that is hiding out on this remote island. There's a lot of really interesting, gothic, mysterious stuff happening in Apostle. I love the vibe of this movie. It's macabre, it's dark, it goes into some very dark directions, a little bit supernatural. Like I said, there's like an H.P. Lovecraft thing happening here. It ultimately never gets fully developed to the point that I just love this movie, but I like so many elements of it that I do strongly recommend it. I do feel like just with a little more of a tweak, this thing could have been a banger. But speaking of Gareth Evans and The Raid, the last movie I'm recommending on this list was released in October 2018, right before Bird Box, and it is every bit as brutal and slightly more gruesome than the Raid movies. It's titled The Night Comes for Us. Now, this one opens up with a bit of a prologue. There's some action, but you've got about 20 minutes, less than 30, before the action pops off in this movie. The reason I say that, I know that's not a long time, The reason I say that is because once it starts, it does not stop. There is barely time to take a breath with this movie. There are a few moments in between, but the action is not only unhinged, it is non-stop. And when someone gets hit with a machete and the night comes for us, it looks like someone got hit with a machete. It is horrific. They employ a ton, countless real stunts, but they pair that up with horror movie practical effects, and it makes for just an eye-popping, just wowzer of an action movie. I cannot recommend it enough for action movie fans, but if you've got a weak stomach at all, this is not gonna be the movie for you. Hopefully, you did find something worth watching on this list. Don't forget to check out the Magic Spoon link down in the video description, but I'll keep making these videos as long as y'all keep watching them. Thanks for watching this special Netflix list, and you will see me on the next one.